Thank you, sir. All right, are we ready for the jury? Oh, okay, sure. All right, so we ready for the jury then? Okay. Wait, which of the jury? All right, you may be seated. All right. Do you need to approach for a moment? Okay. Your next question.
Mr. Banya, before lunch we were talking about your opinions in response to the testimony of Mr. Schnell. Did you also analyze the testimony of Ms. Arnold in this case?
Yes, I did.
And are you aware of her opinion that Ms. Heard's career would have followed the same trajectory as that of Jason Momoa, Gal Gadot, Zendaya, Ana de Armas, and Chris Pine, if not for the Waldman statements?
Yes.
What's your understanding of Ms. Arnold's basis for her opinion that Ms. Heard's career should have been similar to that of those identified actors?
Ms. Arnold stated that when producers or her industry is looking to hire talent in actors, that it's important to best understand the public's perception of the actors that they're considering, and that it's important to look into social media to see what is happening with the actors they're considering for either a movie or even an endorsement opportunity with companies. So that was her approach.
And is that the process she followed in providing her analysis of those purportedly comparable actors?
No. Although she stated that, she went in and brought in these alleged comparable actors, and without really reasoning behind that.
Did you conduct an analysis based on your expertise in social media and internet analytics of Ms. Heard compared to the actors to whom Ms. Arnold compares her?
I did.
And what did you find?
Well, since Ms. Arnold stated that the proper approach is looking at the public perspective, looking into social media, and she did not do that, I felt that was the best approach to do this based on her words. So yes, I did go into best understanding the public perspective of Ms. Heard and the alleged comparable actors using Q scores. Then I also went and did some analysis online and on social media as well.
Can you briefly remind the jury what Q scores are?
Yeah, again, Q scores measure how well a celebrity, it could be a cartoon character, it could be a sports person, how well they're known, how well they're liked, and how much they're disliked. And it's an industry standard tool that's used. It's not just focused on the movies that they're in, but it's focused on them as actors, but also what's happening in their personal lives come to play as well. So that's how Q scores are typically used.
Did you prepare a demonstrative that reflects the Q score analysis you completed?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach again?
All right, thank you.
No objection to the demonstrative.
All right, we'll identify plaintiffs 1296 for identification and publish to the jury.
Mr. Vanya, what point in time do these Q scores represent that are reflected on your demonstrative?
So these are the winter 2019 Q scores that are reflected here. And what was important for me is I wanted to find Q scores that represented Miss Heard after Aquaman. And remember, Aquaman is December of 2018. These Q scores were gathered January and February of 19, but before the Waldman statements. And
what did you find based on the Q scores that you looked at?
So as you see here on the left are positive Q scores, and the higher the number, the better. As you can see, Ms. Godot has the highest Q score out of the group of actors here at a 28. But you're going to notice Ms. Heard has the lowest positive Q score. She has a 9. So I find that very interesting that she doesn't appear to fit in as a comparable with these alleged comparable actors. I think what's also interesting is the average Q score for all actors being scored at that time, which include all the alleged comparable actors here, score at an average of 17. And you can see, again, she is 9, well below that. And then on the right side, you're going to see the negative Q scores. So this is how much people dislike you. So the lower the score is better. You can see Mr. Momoa is over here with the lowest at an 8, but you can see Ms. Heard is over here at a 28, which was quite a difference. A 20-point difference from Mr. Momoa, and also a 10-point difference, from the average of all actors. So she is very, very much her positive score is very low, and her negative score is very high, which tells me that she does not fit in as a comparable as it relates to these alleged comparable actors.
What opinions did you form based on that Q-score analysis?
My opinions as it relates to these Q-scores is, Miss Arnold used these actors as allegedly comparable actors. But really, listening to her testimony yesterday, it appears that she's abandoned this approach. I don't think she's using these comparable actors or these alleged comparable actors anymore. She's more relying on her experience, and I agree with that.
Did Ms. Arnold offer a criticism of your use of the Q-scores here?
She did, yes.
And what's your understanding what that criticism is?
Well, what I believe she was saying is that I should have ran Q-scores for these allegedly comparable actors after each of their breakout films, which I disagree. First of all, Q-scores doesn't work like that. Q-scores are available twice a year, so it's not that I could pick a month or a different month for each of the Q-score actors. So I feel that, what was important for me, and this doesn't always happen when I'm using Q-scores, you can get this perfect moment in time, as Miss Heard said, as Miss Arnold said, that, Aquaman was Miss Heard's breakout moment. So these scores reflect that breakout moment, and they're terrible Q-scores.
How would your analysis change if you had used Ms. Arnold's logic with respect to the timing of the Q-scores that you looked at?
I mean, if you really think about what Ms. Arnold was saying, is she's saying that she thinks Q-scores are the highest for each actor right after their breakout moment. So I would think, if anything, these Q-scores could have been a bit lower, because it's not right after their breakout moment. But what's important for me is the fact that these scores reflect, who Amber Heard was at the time before the Waldman statements, but after the Aquaman release.
We can take that one down, Tom. Thank you. What other work have you done in connection with forming your opinions in this case?
Again, taking the advice from Ms. Arnold, it's important. She says the industry looks into social media, what their followings are like, with the numbers as it relates to their followers. Again, what is the public perception of them? So I analyzed their social media accounts, but prior to the Waldman statement. So.
And how did you do that?
Yeah, so what I did, I don't know if you're all familiar with the archive.org. They have a tool called the Wayback Machine. What archive.org does is it archives the internet. So you can go back in time to see what websites and web pages used to look like in the past. Not all the time can you actually get a celebrity's social media accounts to have been archived, but we were fortunate that each of the alleged comparable actors' social media accounts were in archive.org. So I was able to go back in time prior to the Waldman statements to see what the following activity was for each of the alleged comparable actors.
Mr. Banya, did you prepare a demonstrative that reflects your social media analysis?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, ma'am.
No objection to the demonstrative.
All right, we'll mark it for identification purposes, plaintiffs 1297, and publish.
Mr. Banya, could you tell the jury what you found when you looked at the social media?
Yeah, so what I found, again, this is prior to the Waldman statements. First thing you're going to notice here is not all actors use social media. You're going to see Mr. Pine doesn't have Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and Momoa and DeArmas don't use Facebook or Twitter. But what's important to look at is you have Ms. Heard prior to the Waldman statements with 3.8 Instagram followers and 142,500 Twitter followers. And then you move down to Gal Gadot with 37 million Instagram followers compared to her 3.8 million. And 2.3 million Twitter followers compared to Ms. Heard's 142,000. And you can then even go down to Zendaya with 65.9 million and 17.2 million Twitter followers. What this is telling me is really, more people are interested in Ms. Godot and Zendaya and even Mr. Momoa than Ms. Heard on social media. It just tells me a lot. People are interested in these actors as opposed to Ms. Heard, more of a following. Q scores, well-liked, less disliked. So it kind of fits into the analysis of determining whether or not these alleged comparable actors are actually comparable.
Based on your expertise, what are your overall opinions about Ms. Arnold's analysis of the so-called comparable actors?
Yes, again, it appears that she's abandoned this approach, and I agree with that. I feel that, through the Q-score analysis and the social media analysis, that they're just not comparable.
Tom, we can take that one down. Mr. Banya, based on all the analysis you did in this case, what are your overall opinions?
Yes, my overall opinions are that Mr. Schnell failed to prove any causal connection with the Waldman statements and the search or the hashtag activity, those spikes as it relates to Twitter. There's no causal connection there. My second opinion is, based on my social media and Q-score analysis, Ms. Arnold's alleged comparable actors are not comparable. And then third, Ms. Arnold and Mr. Schnell both failed to prove any causation as it relates to the Waldman statements causing economic harm to Ms. Heard. So, as a damages expert, which Ms. Arnold is, you need to take into consideration causation before you can calculate damages. You look at damages and you look at this allegedly damaging event, and not only do you have to prove that 100% of the damage is because of these Waldman statements, she didn't even consider COVID. It happened at the same time. A lot of actors probably made a lot less money because of COVID. Maybe films didn't get made. And, when you do an analysis of damages, you prove causation, but you also have to look at everything else that might have caused this alleged economic harm. And she didn't look into any of that. She didn't even know what causation was. So I don't think damages is an appropriate approach in this case.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Mr. Banya.
Hi.
Yeah, you're not a damages expert, correct?
I am a damages expert, but not providing any quantitative damages opinions in this case.
In this case, okay. And is it your testimony that only if a person repeats the Waldman-Depp statements could they be related to the defamation?
Say that one more time?
Are you saying that a person literally has to repeat the Waldman-Depp statements in a tweet for them to be related to the defamation?
No, if you looked at my analysis, I did pick the three themes as it relates to the tweets, and I analyzed those themes, and I came up with 5 examples of when those themes were used.
And you ran searches for, quote, abuse hoax, sexual violence hoax, and fake sexual violence, and you ran all those in quotes, correct?
I did.
So only if a person used a tweet with those words in that order and with that spacing would they hit on your searches, correct?
Objection, compound.
Overruled.
Yeah, so I used them in quotes because, hoax could be used in many other contexts. So I wanted to make sure I was fitting my search with the theme of the Waldman statements.
So if someone tweeted Ms. Heard faked sexual violence, that wouldn't appear in your searches, correct? Faked with an ED.
It would not.
Okay. And if they use 2 spaces between abuse and hoax, that wouldn't fit in your search.
That's correct.
Okay. Did you? And a tweet can only be 280 characters, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So certain of the Waldman-Depp statements, a person could not tweet the whole thing in one tweet, correct? The whole statement in one tweet.
The Waldman statement?
Correct.
No, you could not
Okay.
tweet those entire quotes.
Did you make any determination if there was an online bullying campaign against Mr. Depp after Ms. Heard's op-ed?
I didn't look into any online bullying campaign for Ms. Heard nor Mr. Depp.
Did you determine if there were tweets harassing Mr. Depp that quoted from Ms. Heard's op-ed?
No, my assignment was to determine if the Waldman statements were part of the tweets that Mr. Schnell provided. I was rebutting him.
And in your analysis of when you testified before, you never looked to see if the op-ed was quoted anywhere, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
All right, questions withdrawn. Next question.
Now, you have no objection to Ms. Arnold's use of comparables, correct? Just the use of comparables in general.
I listened to her testimony and my understanding that she abandoned that approach. But as it relates to my testimony today, my opinion was related to those specific alleged comparable actors, that they were not comparable.
You're not offering an opinion as to who the appropriate comparables should be to Ms. Heard, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you testified just before about the Q scores of Ms. Heard and the comparables. That was Plaintiff's Exhibit 1296, correct?
I don't know what 1296 means.
Okay. The demonstrative in front of you.
Mine? Yes, that's correct.
And you said that those were all for the winter of 2019?
I said Ms. Heard's were from the winter of 2019.
Because isn't it true that none of the rest of these people were from the winter of 2019, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In fact, Mr. Momoa's was from the summer of 2020?
That's correct. Not all alleged comparable actors had Q scores for that date. What was important for me is to get Ms. Heard's Q scores right after Aquaman, but before the Waldman statements.
So you weren't comparing apples to apples, correct?
I wouldn't say that. I'm saying that it's not the exact same years.
Well, so in the winter of 2019, that Q score comes out. That the field work dates for that is from January 22nd, 2019 to February 7th, 2019, correct?
That is correct.
So that would be so the field work would be starting almost immediately after Aquaman just came out, correct?
Yeah, in her Star is Born moment, yes.
You'd agree that for the winter of 2020, where you took Jason Momoa's Q score, would have more time to account for the rise in popularity of the film Aquaman, correct?
Well, actually, if I use Ms. Arnold's suggestion, the celebrities tend to have, the celebrity moment right after they have their breakout film. So I disagree with that. I think maybe his Q scores could be lower as it relates to when I use them.
You'd agree that for the winter of 2020, Mr. Momoa's Q score would have more time to account for the rise in popularity of the film Aquaman?
I don't know if it accounts for the rise of popularity. Again, using Ms. Arnold's words, usually a Q score will be the highest right after the film, like I did measure Ms. Heard.
May I approach her?
All right. Do you show? Thank you. All right. Thank you.
If you look on page 177 of your deposition transcript, you see that?
I don't see a page. Is that what you handed me?
You don't see page 177? At the 4 pages? 4 pages per?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
And I asked you at lines 6 through 10, you'd agree that for the winter of 2020, Jason Momoa's Q score would have more time to account for the rise of popularity in the film Aquaman, and you answered yes.
At that time, as I am a rebuttal expert to Ms. Arnold, based on her testimony, I've learned something new from her.
Okay. You didn't look at Ms. Heard's Q score for summer of 2020, correct?
She doesn't have any.
And Ms. de Armas had a lower familiarity score than Ms. Heard, correct?
If I don't have that in front of me, but if you're saying that, yes.
Okay. And Ms. de Armas's career trajectory has gone up since the summer of 2020, correct?
I don't know. I didn't analyze her career trajectory.
Okay. Could you put up plaintiff's trial exhibit 1297? That was the demonstrative. Ms. de Armas has less Instagram followers than Ms. Heard, correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Heard has more than double the Instagram followers of Ms. de Armas, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And isn't it true that you get more social media followers the longer you're on social media?
Not necessarily. It doesn't work that way. It depends on many other factors.
And so Ms. de Armas had a lower familiarity score and less Instagram followers, yet your testimony is that she would not be a proper comparable to Ms. Heard?
That's correct.
Okay. And you're not offering a different set of people who should be comparables, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. You can take that down. Now, you understand that Mr. Waldman has been banned from Twitter for life for harassing Amber Heard, correct?
I don't know that, but if that's the case.
And you understand that Mr. Waldman appealed the decision to Twitter and they have confirmed his ban for life?
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach on this one?
Okay, sure.
You agree that in looking at Mr. Schnell's data, 65% of the uses of negative hashtags relating to Ms. Heard occurred between April 1st, 2020 and June 15th, 2021, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you would agree that 5 of the 6 highest spikes of the negative hashtags were after the Depp-Waldman statements, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And where you talked about the February 2020 spike, and the 65%, by the way, even includes the February 2020 spike of tweets, correct?
That's correct. Well, there was no spike in Feb 2020 during the Waldman statements?
Well, the spike in February 2020 was before the Waldman statements, right?
I would have you. Can we pull up the chart again if you want to talk about the spikes?
Sure. Can you put up 1294? Number one.
Number one. Yeah, that spike happened before the Waldman statements.
Okay. And there was hardly any activity in negative hashtags until February 2020, correct?
That's correct.
And you understand that the spike in February 2020 was related to the partial tape that Mr. Waldman and Mr. Depp leaked to the Daily Mail, right?
I'm aware that the articles were related to Heard admitting to hitting Depp.
And you understand that Mr. Waldman testified that Mr. Depp and Mr. Waldman met with the Daily Mail in person to provide the partial tape to the Daily Mail.
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, he talked about what the number one related to.
What's the objection?
Sorry, lack of foundation and
I'm asking if he knows or he doesn't.
All right, overruled.
So what's important to me is the fact that this spike is prior to the Waldman statements.
Do you know if Mr. Waldman testified that Mr. Depp and he met with the Daily Mail in person to provide the partial tape?
No.
In February of 2020. You don't know one way or the other.
It's irrelevant to my opinion.
Okay. And the spike in July of 2020 came right after the last defamatory statement by Mr. Depp and Mr. Waldman, correct?
The July spike, which is number 2, is not related to the Waldman statements, and there are articles related to abuse between Heard and Depp and feces found in Depp's bed.
And that's based on Google searches you did?
That's correct.
Okay. And the July spike in time came after the June 27th, 2020 defamatory statement by Mr. Depp and Mr. Waldman, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And 5 of the 6 spikes came after the defamatory statements, correct?
After the Waldman statements, yes.
Okay. Now, you testified before that you eliminated shares and likes of the Depp-Waldman statements from your analysis, right?
Repeat that, please.
Did you say that you eliminated shares and likes of tweets that included the Depp-Waldman statements?
That's correct. When I was doing my analysis, I noticed the exact same text was a part of many of these tweets.
Don't shares and likes disseminate the negative information?
That's quite possible.
Okay. And you agree, right, that use of the term Waldman or Waldmanian occurred over 25% of the time in the negative tweets toward Ms. Heard from April 2020 through January 2021, correct?
Although it's irrelevant to this case, it has nothing to do with the Waldman statements. That's what Mr. Schnell says.
You don't disagree with the search results, correct?
Although has nothing to do with this case or the Waldman statements, I do not disagree.
So if people are tweeting about Adam Waldman or Waldmanian at the same time as tweeting negative hashtags about Amber Heard, it's your testimony that they have nothing to do with this case?
The hashtags have nothing to do with this case.
That's what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And even if they include the negative hashtags with Mr. Waldman's name and Waldmanian, you're saying they have nothing to do with the defamatory statements?
All 4 hashtags that Snell used had nothing to do with the Waldman statements.
Yeah.
Waldman himself has nothing to do with the Waldman statements. We're talking about the Waldman statements here. Waldmanian, I don't even know what that is, but again, it has nothing to do with this case, and it's not related to the Waldman statements. That's what's important.
And the reason you're saying they're not related to the Waldman statements is because someone didn't literally copy what Adam Waldman said in the Daily Mail and tweet it out?
Well, I looked at enough tweets that included the name Waldman that have nothing to do with anything negative or the Waldman statement.
No, they must have had to have the negative hashtags toward Ms. Heard, because the only way that those would have been in the data you looked at would have had the negative hashtags towards Ms. Heard. It was looking at that universe, correct?
Well, first of all, I don't agree that justice for Johnny Depp is a negative hashtag towards Amber Heard. So, listen, the assignment was to determine if the tweets that Mr. Schnell presented were related or included the Waldman statements.
In your review of the tweets related to Ms. Heard, you cannot point to any that were positive toward Ms. Heard, correct?
Again, I was not looking for that.
And you did not review the hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp during the time frame from April 1st, 2020 to January 1st, 2020 to see if there were any that were not negative toward Ms. Heard?
I did not look into anything as it relates to anything other than what relates to the Waldman statements. That's what's at issue here today as we sit in court.
Okay. And you didn't form any statistical analysis to rule out the Waldman statements' impact on the hashtags, correct?
Correct.
You did not analyze whether media and press coverage other than the Waldman statements affected Ms. Heard's career, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Looking at the exhibit that's in front of you, where you have the numbers here, those you said are related to Google searches?
The 1 through 6?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. And can we put up plaintiff's 888? And we could just start at 1. Do you understand that your... Okay. Oh, thanks. And 888, it's page 76. These are the documents you relied upon for your opinion today?
Yes.
And are these the search, where it has the different letters, these are the searches that you ran for the various time frames and the articles that came up for numbers 1 through 6, correct?
No. I mean, obviously, document 1A is the Heard supplemental expert witness disclosure. These are documents that I used throughout the time I've been working on this project. So these aren't related to those 1 through 6 numbers.
Okay. These are documents you relied upon for your opinion today?
These are documents that I relied upon when I presented my designation.
For your opinion today, that you're offering today?
Yeah, these are the documents that, yes, I've relied on throughout this case.
Okay. And actually, Michelle, could you turn in this designation to let's see. Hold on one second. Go. Can you just scroll down? Yeah, keep scrolling. Just keep going. Keep going. Okay, stop. This was the chart you provided with your designation for your opinions in this case, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it's similar to the chart that we had before with the 1 through 6, correct?
That's correct.
And where it has the various boxes, it's talking about documents 6E through 6H, for instance, related to Depp wanting to have Heard replaced on Aquaman.
Yes.
And you prepared this chart, correct?
Yeah, this was part of my designation.
I'd like to have this page as a demonstrative.
Your Honor, I do have an objection, if I might be heard.
All right, if you want to come forward, page 99.
Mr. Banya. Other than so as I understand it, the way you determined that the tweets were not related to the Waldman statements was that you looked at time and then you ran certain Google searches, correct?
Correct.
And then the top 3 hits came up.
Correct.
And then you looked through the article to see if the Waldman statements were there?
So as it relates to any trending event, any defamation that's happened online, any allegations of economic loss because something went viral, going to Google, looking at the spikes in time and going back in time to see what was happening on those top 3 sites will give you an indication of the best results that were being served at that time. So something viral that's happening would appear most likely in those top 3 results.
And just so the record's clear, if we could go back to page 76 of this document. Numbers 6A through 6N, going to the next page, those are the headlines of the searches that you found?
Correct.
Okay. And you don't disagree that that negative tweets toward Ms. Heard have continued throughout the analysis of the tweets, correct?
I'm not looking at whether they're negative tweets or those hashtags are negative. I'm determining if those tweets are related to the Waldman statements.
Okay, and you have no opinion whether the tweets were positive or negative towards Ms. Heard. That's what you're saying?
Yes, I'm just analyzing whether or not they're related to the Waldman statements.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing further.
All right, redirect.
I have no further questions of this witness, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Banya.
Yes.
Sir, you can leave the courtroom or you can stay.
Thank you.
All right, your next witness. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief recess for you at this point. Hopefully within 15 minutes we'll be right back to you, okay? Do not discuss the case and don't do any outside research. Sorry, do not discuss the case and don't do any outside research. Sorry, we'll just take a short break. All right, so just so that we're on the same page, you can have a seat. Keep standing the whole time. All right, just so we're on the same page with Mr. Knight's testimony. Actually, could Mr. Knight go back out, please? All right, so we're on the same page with Mr. Knight's testimony. There is a rule on witnesses. However, Mr. Knight's a rebuttal witness. The purpose of excluding witnesses from the courtroom, usually it's a courtroom, is to deprive a later witness of the opportunity to shape testimony to correspond with that of an earlier witness. The issue we have here, obviously, if it was a direct witness in the direct testimony, you had time to do a rule on witnesses, let them know about the rule on witnesses. With a rebuttal witness, it's a little different, because they didn't know they were going to be a witness. You didn't know they were going to be a witness. I understand that part. The problem is the courtroom in this particular case appears to be the world. So what we have to do here is I'm going to do a voir dire, and I'll allow both sides to ask questions as well of Mr. Knight to see what he has seen of the case. And I'm just going to use the factors that the case law in Virginia uses, which the factors to consider, because the court does have broad discretion to permit or prohibit a witness to testify in this particular circumstance. So the factors I'm going to consider is if the impropriety was intentional, which we'll find out, the prejudice attached to it, Also, if the excluded witness learned about substantive aspects of the case from an earlier testifying witness, and whether that knowledge had any effect on his or her testimony. So those are the three factors I'm going to look at in weighing this decision. So keep that in mind when you do your voir dire. And it's my understanding that the evidence that Mr. Knight will testify only relates to Hicksville. Is that correct? Okay. All right, now we can have Mr. Knight. Come bring it on. All right, sir. Mr. Knight, if you could come forward to be sworn.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case in a penalty of law?
I do. All right. Sir, if you could just have a seat, please. All right, sir, what we're doing is I'm just going to ask you a few questions outside the presence of the jury, and then the attorneys are going to ask you a few questions, okay?
Sure.
Then I'm going to have you step back outside after that, okay?
No problem.
All right. What's your full name, sir?
Morgan Higby Knight,
Okay, you don't have to be that close. All right. All right. How do you spell your last name?
Night.
Okay. All right. And, sir, before I can allow you to testify, I just want to ask you a few questions. Have you seen any of the trial that's been going on for the past 6 weeks?
Approximately 5 weeks ago, a friend of mine texted me that Hicksville was mentioned, and I watched a little clip where
Okay.
it was mentioned.
Which clip did you watch?
I believe it was somebody testifying about, I think it was the security guard testifying maybe about Hicksville, or I forget exactly who was testifying, but it was something where Hicksville was mentioned, and it was about something about a wrist or something like that.
All right. And what did you do after that? At some point, did you get in contact with attorneys?
So I didn't reach out to them. I didn't really care. The innkeepers that worked at Hicksville before reached out to them and said, we saw some stuff that wasn't true. And then they asked, is it okay if I give the attorneys your phone number? So the attorneys reached out to me.
Okay. And when did the attorneys reach out to you?
May 3rd.
May 3rd. And you talked to the attorneys at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not Camille, but Geraldine.
Okay. And then have you seen any other parts of the trial?
No, she instructed me not to watch anything about it, regardless of if it was about Hicksville or not. So I've been
Since May
keeping
3rd.
off the internet and turning off anything that seems to be like it's on social media. So I just don't watch any of that.
Okay. All right. And questions, Ms. Prater?
So, Mr. Knight, you were contacted by an attorney for Mr. Depp on May 3rd?
Yes,
Okay. And you said it was Geraldine?
Geraldine.
Oh, Geraldine. I got it. Okay. And
I
what...
think it's pronounced Geraldine.
Okay. Can you tell us the conversation you had with her at that time?
Yeah, she just asked me my recollection of the evening, and I told her, and she said, okay, would you mind testifying? And I said, sure. And she said, okay, well then we're not sure if we're going to call you or not, but just in case, please don't watch anything having to do with the case. And I said, I will do.
Now, how is it that, to your best knowledge, how is it that Geraldine was able to get hold of you? How did she know that you knew something?
So, like I said, two of my innkeepers, my innkeeper and my manager, had reached out to her team, I think through email, and one of them texted me and said, hey, do you mind if we give Geraldine your phone number?
Now, you also communicated on Twitter, did you not, about this case?
Yeah, 2 weeks prior to Geraldine reaching out to me, someone had made a comment about something that happened by the fire pit, and I said, that's not my recollection. I didn't see, that's not what I saw.
So who was it that made a comment about something that happened at the fire pit?
So once I was told about the fact that Hicksville was mentioned, I went and did a Twitter search of Hicksville trailer. So it was, I don't know who it was, but I was just like, what are they saying about Hicksville? And so that was why I did a search, just to see, because it was weird and fascinating, because the night to me wasn't that remarkable in the context of all the different experiences I've had at the trailer palace.
So explain to me, please, what you mean by you did a trailer search.
So if you go to Twitter and you put in keywords and do a search, all the tweets regarding that subject come up, or anything with those keywords in it. So that is how I found the tweet that I replied to.
Okay. And how many tweets did you find that mentioned Hicksville when you did that trailer search?
Probably like 5 or 6. I only replied to one of them.
Okay. And what do you recall those tweets saying about Hicksville?
The one that I replied to said that there was some incident by the fire pit, and Johnny was yelling at Amber, and I replied that I didn't see that. I was there all night, and I was working that night, so I didn't see anything like that.
So your best recollection on that one was that somebody said somebody was testifying that Johnny was yelling at Amber?
Yeah, and I believe grabbed her or something along those lines.
Okay. Do you recall who said Johnny was yelling at Amber and grabbed her?
I have no idea. It was a stranger, so I didn't really pay attention to who was writing it.
All right, and you said that you responded to it. How did you respond to it?
I said that's not what happened. I was there all night. Yeah, basically. I'm paraphrasing. It was a
Did
few
you
months
say
ago.
anything about what you thought happened?
I just said that didn't happen. I didn't say what. I believe I said maybe something along the lines of, from what I saw, Amber was the one acting jealous, not Johnny.
And you said this to one of the tweets.
Yes.
Do you recall whether that was the Umbrella Man?
I don't recall. That's a ridiculous name, though.
Okay. So tell me about the other 5 tweets that you recall seeing when you ran your trailer search.
I think they were similar in nature, but I don't specifically remember the details of them. That was pretty much the only one I remembered, and that's the only one I replied to.
Do you remember anything about the other 5 and what was said?
No.
Okay. When you said that somebody told you about a security guard, what was your understanding of what the security guard said?
I got a text that somebody in the trial had said that they were talking about the Trailer Palace during the trial. And so that's what led me to go on Twitter and do a search.
And did you have any communications with the 2 innkeepers about what you knew or what you thought?
No, I hadn't talked to them in years, and still haven't regarding the case.
So how is it that the innkeepers then contacted you and said, do you mind if we give you the telephone number to the attorneys?
Because they still have me in their phone, and Christy, who was the manager at the time, is the one that texted me and said, hey, do you mind if we pass this along? Mr. Depp's attorneys want to talk to you.
Do you mind if we pass what along?
Your phone number.
Right, but how is it what is the communication you had with the innkeepers that even led them to understand that you believed you had knowledge about the Hicksville incident?
There was no conversation. They knew because they were both working that same night. Jenna was the innkeeper, and she was there along with me that night. Christy was the one who texted me, and she had come in the following morning for her shift. And I slept over. I was live-in innkeeper that night.
So I'm trying to understand. So just based on the fact that 7 years ago, they happened to know that you were working that night.
9 years ago, and it's because I was there with them.
My math, well, it's 2022 right now, and that was what year? Oh, that was
2013.
You're right. Okay. So how is it that out of the blue they remembered 9 years ago that you worked there that night and that you might have some knowledge?
I mean, to be honest, like, we do get celebrities sometimes, but it was, it's not that unmemorable. It's not like it's any other night of the week. So I'm sure they remembered the specifics of that night.
Had Mr. Depp's attorneys ever attempted to contact you before?
No.
Had you ever attempted to contact Mr. Depp's attorneys before?
No, I had no interest.
All right. Have you had any conversations with Mr. Depp's attorneys other than the one you described with Geraldine?
Since?
Yes.
Well, I met with Camille last night.
All right. And what was that conversation? Please describe.
I just went through, the story again that I had told Geraldine.
And let's hear what that story was.
You want me to go through
Yes.
the whole story?
Your Honor, we would object to attorney work product.
There's no attorney work product.
No, I'll overrule that
All right.
objection. That's fine. That's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah,
Please
sure.
continue.
That I described, like, them getting to the trailer palace, me showing them around, the interactions I had when I was on duty with Mr. Depp and Miss Heard, how the evening progressed throughout the night, the levels of drinking and drug use that I witnessed, what the state of the damaged trailer the next morning, and basically just, the details that I had only, spent total 45 minutes to an hour with Mr. Depp and Miss Heard throughout the entire course of the night. So it was my recollection of those events during that time.
And what did Ms. Vasquez say to you?
Your Honor, this is beyond, we object on the grounds that it's beyond the scope of the voir dire,
No,
which is
I think
limited to the
whatever
three
she said
criteria.
to him is
May I
very
please finish
critical.
stating my objection, Your Honor?
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
The objection is that it's beyond the scope of the voir dire. Your Honor enumerated the three criteria which are relevant here. And this is a rebuttal witness, so
Your Honor, whatever Ms. Vasquez shared with him is going to be very important here because they knew by this time he was going to be a witness. So,
Well, that was
what-
last night. So how
Right.
does that fit into one of the three factors of deciding whether or not he's going to testify?
Well, one of the three factors, Your Honor, may I approach so that the witness doesn't hear?
Okay, that's fine.
Mr. Knight, did
Yes.
Ms. Vasquez provide you with any information that anyone had testified to or said at any point?
No, she didn't talk about anything except for asking me my experience and just getting a clear understanding of what my experience was. She didn't mention anything outside of the scope of what I saw and just asked me for the facts and told me just tell the truth and let me know,
Do you know what any of the witnesses said in this trial?
about, outside of what I described earlier with the a friend of mine texting that someone was talking about Trailer Palace, I do not.
Do you know whether any of the witnesses testified about any jealousy?
Other than the tweet that I replied to, no.
All right. Thank you. Your Honor, may we approach?
All right. Well, do you have any questions?
Oh.
All right. Sir, if you could have a seat back outside the courtroom.
Sure.
Thank you.
Can I leave my water?
Yes, you can leave your water. All right. So based on weighing the factors, I'm going to allow Mr. Knight to testify. If we could get Mr. Knight back in. Now, if I knew you were going to do a sidebar, I wouldn't have made him leave. But I never know. All right, sir, if you could just stay up, you could just stay there while we get the jury, okay? All right, are we ready for the jury?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
John.
thank you. Yeah. Just we're going to swear him in again in front of the jury, okay? All right, you be seated. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize for the interruption. You're going to notice as we get closer to the end of the testimony, you're probably going to have some more interruptions, and I apologize for that, but there's just some matters we have to take up outside your presence, okay? All right, thank you. All right, your next witness. All right, Mr. Knight, if you could come forward to be sworn.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case under penalty of law?
I do.
Sir, if you could have a seat.
Good afternoon, Mr. Knight.
Good afternoon, Camille.
Would you please state your full name for the record?
Morgan Higby Knight.
Mr. Knight, where are you from?
I live in Los Angeles, California.
And what do you do for a living?
So I currently own and run Hicksville Pines Bud and Breakfast in Idlewild, California. And I created and ran Hicksville Trailer Palace in Joshua Tree, California, starting in 2009.
And how is Hicksville Pines Bud and Breakfast different from Hicksville Trailer Palace?
So Hicksville Pines Bud and Breakfast is up in the mountains of Idlewild, which is a beautiful snow town above Palm Springs. And all the units are A-frames instead of trailers, which we have. It's obviously a very different climate than Joshua Tree, which is a desert area. The rooms, which are themed at both places, are trailers, vintage trailers from the 50s through the 70s at Hicksville Trailer Palace. So there's also different kind of amenities. There's a pool in Joshua Tree. There's a rec room up at Hicksville Pines.
When did you first become the owner of the Trailer Palace?
Trailer Palace, I started building it in 2009. It took about a year with my collaborator, Stephen Butcher, and on the trailers. And we got done and opened in 2010.
Did there come a time that you sold the Hicksville Trailer Palace?
Yeah, I did at the beginning of 2020. I had some health issues and it was too much to run both at the same time. So I chose Idlewild because it was newer and shinier.
And just for my sake, how long did you own the Trailer Palace?
So 10 years of us being open, 11 years total.
And what was the Hicksville Trailer Palace?
So it started out as a artist retreat. I was a filmmaker at the time and wanted a place to get away and work on film projects outside of Los Angeles. I also put in a recording studio so musicians could record records there. I had lived in New Orleans for 5 years, and there was an amazing recording studio there called Kingsway, where all the musicians would come and they'd live in this big mansion and record their records. And I just thought that was a really neat thing for artists to be able to get away and create create whatever they were working on. Over the course of the build out of all the trailers, themed trailers, which I'm a huge fan of this hotel called Madonna Inn. And so I wanted to do really detailed themed trailers. It became too expensive to just make a living off of an artist retreat. So I decided before I was done to make it a hotel as well.
And what were your job responsibilities, generally speaking, when you owned the Hicksville Trailer Palace?
So I would be live-in manager some nights, a couple nights a week. I would also drive out from Los Angeles twice a week and bring supplies that you can't get out in the Yucca Valley area and Joshua Tree. There's just a lot of things like, Smart and Finals, Costco's and stuff. So I would drive that stuff out. There's also no USPS, so sometimes I'd have to get things shipped to my house and drive them out as well. I would also just do constantly building and creating new stuff at Trailer Palace, whether it's new trailers or amenities. So I would be working on that stuff as well. I'm a big fan of the fact that Disneyland is always making it better and better.
And when you were the live-in manager, does that mean that you spent the night at the Hicksville Trailer Palace?
Yeah, we have a house on site where the recording studio was, and there's a bedroom in there. So whoever is live-in manager those nights stays in the house and basically lives there. There's a kitchen and everything.
Have you ever met the plaintiff in this case, Mr. Depp?
I had met him really briefly at the Viper Room in the late 90s. I had worked with some of the people that performed there and was good friends with this girl Robin from the Pussycat Dolls and some other friends in this band, The Imposters. So I was there and I met him once.
How about Miss Heard? Ever met her?
I had never met her before. They were guests at the hotel.
When was the first time that you met Mr. Depp and Miss Heard together?
In late May 2013, when they were guests, Mr. Depp's assistant Nathan had rented out the entire place so they could have a night there in privacy.
And what do you recall, if anything, about Mr. Depp and Miss Heard's arrival to the Hicksville Trailer Palace?
Mr. Depp got lost, so his security guard who arrived early asked me if I could go fetch them because he had an old car that didn't really fare on the dirt roads out there, which are pretty horrible. So I went out and made sure that they got themselves and the car back to Hicksville safely.
Do you remember approximately at what time that was?
It was 3 to 4 in the afternoon.
What was Mr. Depp's demeanor when they first arrived?
At Trailer Palace, he was super excited about the place, really complimentary, just had a lot of questions and just seemed like he was in a really great mood.
And how about Miss Heard's demeanor? Anything stick out?
She was pretty quiet. She just kind of didn't say that much when I was giving them the tour of the grounds and the trailer.
And was anyone else with Mr. Depp and Miss Heard when they first arrived?
There was people that were arriving throughout the afternoon. So there was, I think 10 to 12 people total ended up staying. The security guard had gotten there earlier and just to check out the place. But yeah.
And did I understand your testimony previously that the entire trailer park was rented out by Mr. Depp and Miss Heard?
Yeah, the whole place slept, I believe at the time, about 25 people, but there was only 10 to 12 in this party.
And who was part of that party besides Mr. Depp and Miss Heard?
I'm really horrible with names, but I remember one of them was Miss Heard's sister and the security guard I mentioned before, but I honestly forgot his name too.
What happened when Mr. Depp and Miss Heard first came onto the property?
So I gave them a tour of, we give all guests a tour of their specific trailer and the grounds and show them around. when someone rents the whole place, they get another trailer called the bar trailer, which is basically a place to set up their alcohol and stuff. And some people in the group were just putting their beverages in that area.
And where were you when Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard, did there come a time when Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard went to the bar trailer?
I didn't notice most of the time that my interactions with them, everything's kind of centrally located. So there's a fire pit, bar trailer, and picnic tables all right in the same area. So they were generally around that area the entire evening that I saw them.
And what did you observe of Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard as the evening progressed?
So Mr. Depp was super curious and really nice. He was also really interested in my innkeeper because she was a musician, so they would talk about music a lot. At one point, the innkeeper who lived at the next door property went home and grabbed her guitar, and they had sung a song or two around the campfire in the early evening. There was another instance where Mr. Depp, the innkeeper, her name is Jenna, and myself were talking about books and music, and Ms. Heard came over and kind of interjected. She seemed a little annoyed that Mr. Depp wasn't spending time with her.
What about Ms. Heard's demeanor made you think that she was annoyed?
I think just generally she, it's hard. Like I think, I don't know. It was just like a gut reaction. Like I can't describe it, but you know.
How long were you with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard that evening, generally?
So throughout the course of the evening, I was probably mostly with Mr. Depp, but 45 minutes to an hour total. So it was, that's over the whole course until the end of the night after the check-in.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to observe Mr. Depp interact with other people, guests at the property that evening?
Yes. I saw him hanging out with a security guard at one point, and outside of the time that him and Jenna were singing around the campfire, he was off by himself a lot of the time, and Ms. Heard was over at the campfire with her friends and seemed to have a good time.
And if you haven't already, can you generally describe for the jury your observations of Ms. Heard that evening?
Yeah, she seemed to be having a really nice time with her friends around the campfire. And yeah, everyone was in a pretty good mood.
Did there come a time in the evening that you observed Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard have a disagreement or an argument?
Yes. I was speaking with Mr. Depp, just one-on-one, talking about Hicksville, and Ms. Heard came over and she said that I want to talk to you, and seemed really upset about something. So I went and back in the house because it was really, they went off on their own, and she started yelling at him, and I didn't want to hear it. It honestly was really triggering because I've been in an emotionally abusive relationship before.
Objections. Move to strike.
What's the objection?
You're up. May we approach?
Okay, sure.
Mr. Knight, will you please just explain for us what you observed when you saw Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard having an argument?
Yes. So Ms. Heard asked him to go talk off to the side, and she was upset at him, and she was yelling at him. And I personally had been in...
Objection.
All right, I'll sustain the objection.
Okay.
If you could just explain to the jury what you observed when you saw Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard having an argument.
Okay. He was kind of cowering and seemed almost afraid, and it was really like odd to see because he was older than her, obviously. So, but I just went back in the house because I didn't
Objection.
want
To what he did.
All right, I'll sustain as to.
Understood. So after you observed the argument, fair to say you went back to your house on site?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Okay. What happened after that?
So when I saw Mr. Depp on my next rounds, he apologized profusely and said, "I'm really sorry about that." She was upset.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Sustain. Next question.
What, if any, type of reaction did Mr. Depp have?
He was just really...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. He's going to say it again.
It's the reaction, it's not the statement.
All right, if you could make that clear, that's fine.
Just what type of physical reaction did Mr. Depp have after the argument between Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard?
He honestly, throughout the rest of the night, became a lot more quiet and was just very more petulant. In the beginning of the night, he was a lot more outgoing and extroverted, and throughout, as the course of the night went on, he was less and less so and more quiet.
Did you observe any of the guests consuming alcohol while on the property?
I assume they were. I mean, people had cups and there was alcohol set up in the bar trailer, but I didn't physically see them pour alcohol into their cup and cup go into the mouth, per se.
Did you witness Mr. Depp drink any alcohol that evening?
I couldn't say.
Okay. Anything about Mr. Depp's demeanor that made you think he was perhaps intoxicated?
Yes, as the night went on, I am a former bar owner, so even though I wasn't drinking that night, I'm very familiar with the signs. So just as the night went on, like I said, he became more and more quiet, but he also, as we would have conversations, his head would kind of sway a little bit back and forth, which was a little, he was much less sharp than he was earlier in the night.
Did Ms. Heard appear intoxicated to you?
She did. She seemed, I think when she was angry at him, it seemed like she was intoxicated, but that's just based on my experience and my own personal trauma dealing with abuse.
Okay. Objection, Your Honor, move to strike.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. We'll strike it from the record. Please disregard that testimony.
Did you observe anyone do or take drugs?
I did not.
Did you witness Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard interact other than the argument that you previously described for the jury?
At the end of the night, I heard a commotion. I was inside the house and came out. I couldn't tell what was going on. And Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard were having a discussion about I'm not sure what, but then they went to their trailer. At that point, a lot of people had already gone to bed. So it just kind of petered out. Everyone went to bed, including myself, and I didn't hear anything else the rest of the night.
What time did the evening come to an end?
I'd say it was almost around 3 a.m.
Did you ever see Mr. Depp grab anyone?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Did you ever see Mr. Depp become physical with anyone?
Objection, leading.
Sustained. Next question.
Did you ever witness Mr. Depp get angry that evening?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
What, if anything, happened the next morning?
The next morning, we have checkout at noon at the time, before COVID. And so around 11 o'clock, one of my innkeepers let me know that there was some damage.
Objection, hearsay.
Did something happen that caused you to go to Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard's trailer?
Yes, I was informed that...
Objection, hearsay.
It's not being offered for the truth, Your Honor. I mean, may we approach on this one
Okay,
topic?
sure.
Thank you. anything happen the next morning, Mr. Knight?
The innkeepers let me know that there was some damage in one of the trailers, and it happened to be Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard's trailer. So I wanted to inspect the trailer because I was extremely worried. All those trailers that Steve and I worked on were like my babies, and the one they were staying in was the only one that was mostly original and restored 1950s style, and so I was very concerned.
So what did you observe when you went to the trailer?
I observed that there was a light sconce by the bathroom in the bedroom that had been broken off the wall, and a couple pieces were on the floor, and they were, it was basically just broken. The light fixture was hanging on the wall still, except for the pieces that were on the floor.
Did you come to understand how that happened?
Objection, foundation, and
All right,
light.
foundation, I'll sustain as to foundation, how you knew.
Did you ask how the sconce was broken?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
How often do light fixtures in the trailers break?
They break pretty often. I mean, it's not like a usual thing, but things in the trailers generally get broken because it's all vintage trailers, and I would say as much as every couple weeks there's some incident of damage in one of the trailers. In this case, Mr. Depp had told me that.
Objection, hearsay.
Objection.
So anyway, yes.
Beyond the light fixture, was anything else in the trailer damaged?
No, everything else looked fine. In fact, we have something we call a piggy fee that we address to guests, that if there's anything what we call inconsiderate or unusually large messes, we charge them extra for it for a $25 an hour cleaning fee, but they did not receive one of those because everything outside of the light fixture looked fine.
And what was your reaction to seeing the damaged light fixture?
To be honest, I was relieved because it was not a big deal. There was already another light in the room, so I just tucked the wires in the wall until I had a few months later time to buy, it was matching sconce with another one in the room. So I had to, on eBay, find a matching pair that would fit there, and when I finally got around to it, I was able to get that and charge it to Nathan, whose credit card I had.
And what was your understanding of who Nathan was?
Mr. Depp's assistant.
Okay. And what did you charge Nathan or Mr. Depp for replacing that pair of light fixtures?
The pair came out to $62.
Okay. While you were on site, Mr. Knight, did you ever wear a mesh shirt?
No, I would absolutely never wear that.
At any time during Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard's stay on the property, did you see Mr. Depp become physical with anyone?
Objection, leading.
Overruled. That's good.
I'm sorry, that answer was?
I never saw Mr. Depp get physical with anyone when I saw him.
Thank you,
All
Your
right,
Honor. Nothing further.
cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Knight, you are a pretty big fan of Johnny Depp, aren't you?
I am not. To be honest, throughout the evening,
Sorry, I just asked you one question.
Oh, I
didn't ask you
apologize.
the rest of that.
I
You
apologize.
wanted to participate in this trial, didn't you?
I did not. I
You
was
knew-
asked by the attorney, and I wanted to. They asked me, and I said I'll be happy to come and tell the truth.
You knew this was on camera, that it was being broadcast to a lot of people, and you saw testimony, did you not, in this case? And you seized the moment and responded to the umbrella guy, the lead person for Mr. Depp's Twitters. Did you not?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative compound.
Overruled.
Mr. Umbrella Guy is the lead. The lead.
You
what?
know that he leads one of the most predominant pro-Depp Twitters out there.
I have no idea. I don't care or follow the Umbrella Guy.
In fact, you do follow a Twitter called Johnny Depp Fan, don't you?
Absolutely not.
You don't? That's your testimony under oath?
It is my testimony under oath.
All right. And on April 21st, Mr. Depp testified in this case about Hicksville, didn't he?
I wasn't here.
And in fact, you tweeted in response to the umbrella guy on April 21, 22, quote, "That never happened. I was with them all night. Amber was the one acting all jealous and crazy." Do you
Yes,
recall writing that?
I do recall writing that.
Michelle, can you bring that up, please? We're going to call it Defendants 1903.
1903.
And I'm going to go ahead and ask you to redact, but leave in the umbrella guy and the date and the bringing in the Hicksville. Your Honor, I'm sorry. I'm just... While she's working on that, did you write and direct a piece called Matters of Consequence back in 1999?
I did.
And didn't Mr. Depp's first wife, Lorianne Allison, work as a makeup artist on that?
She absolutely did.
And while we're looking at that, 4 days after you tweeted to Umbrella Man,
That was Umbrella Guy.
the Umbrella Guy. Okay. Well, all right, now we have this up. I'm going to ask you to take a look what is Defendant's Exhibit 1903. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, and that's from that Umbrella Guy on 4/21/22, correct?
Correct.
And it says bringing in the Hicksville incident accusations. Do you see that?
I do.
And there's clearly Mr. Depp testifying there, likely a video, right?
Okay.
And you respond, that never happened. I was with them all night. Amber was the one acting all jealous and crazy. Do you see that?
I do.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendants 1903.
Any objection?
Yeah, Your Honor, we believe the first part of the that Umbrella Guy's tweet should be unredacted for context.
Oh, well.
I
have no idea what I was replying to.
It's hearsay. It's rank hearsay, and the context
Your
is
Honor,
not necessary.
Your own approach.
Of course.
Take a look. All right. Can make that redaction. With that redaction, any objection?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, 1903 will be in evidence with as redacted.
Okay. Yes. Now, so you reached out to the Umbrella Guy in this text, this Twitter, right?
I wouldn't call it reaching out.
Okay. And in fact, the Umbrella Guy is in Mr. Adam Waldman. Do you know who Adam Waldman is?
I have no idea.
Well, he's testified earlier that he talks to the Umbrella Guy.
That he what? He talks to the Umbrella Guy?
Yeah. Were you aware of that?
I honestly, this sounds like schizophrenia.
Okay. Now, 4 days after this event where you texted, Your Honor, yeah, it's in, okay, good. 4 days after that, you tweeted something pretty nasty about Elon Musk, didn't you?
I did.
Okay, thank you. So you don't like Elon Musk, right?
Objection,
Well-
relevance.
Oh,
I don't know Elon Musk.
Overruled.
thank you.
So that was the context of that is that he
I
had.
didn't ask you for the context.
I apologize.
Okay. But you texted something that had swear words in it. Would you agree about Elon Musk?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's talk about your recollections here. 45 minutes to an hour. Your recollection is that Mr. Depp actually drove there?
Yes.
What type of car was he driving?
An old one that was a convertible.
An old convertible?
I'm not a car guy, so I couldn't express the model.
All right. And your recollection was this was May of 2013?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall when in May?
Late May.
Okay. Now, you said that you spent a total of 45 minutes to an hour with Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard. Is that correct?
After that, mostly Mr. Depp, but that's after the tour and after they were checked in throughout the course of the night.
Okay. And you don't recall any of the people that were there other than Ms. Heard's sister and the security guard, correct?
I don't recall any of their names.
Do you remember how many of them were female?
I believe it was predominantly female.
Do you remember how many males were there?
I don't, outside of the security guard.
Do you remember what any of the other people looked like?
They honestly just seemed like youngish hipsters, like for lack of a better term. I know that previously a couple of them had stayed at Hicksville Trailer Palace. That's how they knew about the place.
Okay. So you don't recall seeing how much anybody had to drink that night, correct?
I did not witness that.
And do you recall the use of drugs at all?
I did not witness that.
Okay. Were you sitting at any point with these people at the campfire?
I was not.
Okay. And when you said that that you saw Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp, and Ms. Heard was yelling at Mr. Depp, where were they?
She pulled him for a chat, and it was off towards their trailer, like a little bit off towards the dirt.
How many feet were there between the campfire and their trailer?
The campfire and their trailer?
Yes.
Approximately 75.
Okay. So where in that 75 feet did Ms. Heard pull Mr. Depp and yell at him and he cowered?
20.
Okay. 20
from the campfire.
From
not
the
trailer.
campfire.
Yeah.
So your testimony is that Ms. Heard grabbed Mr. Heard, pulled him 20 feet over, yelled at him, and he cowered.
Yes, that's what I witnessed.
And then did they go back?
I went inside the house.
So you don't know whether they returned to the campfire or they returned to their trailer?
I do not.
Okay. And do you know whether there were any disagreements or physical communications, anything of that nature at the campfire?
I do not.
Do you know whether Mr. Depp did anything to anybody else at the campfire?
I didn't see anything.
Okay. Do you know whether Mr. Depp grabbed anybody's wrist and asked them if they knew how many pounds of pressure it took to break their wrist?
I wasn't there the whole time.
Okay. Is it your testimony that Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard went last to their trailer? Everybody else went before them?
The rest of the people, I think about half of them had already gone to bed, and it was all around the same time at the end of the night that the rest kind of scattered. There might have been a couple of people that went right after them or right before, but it was all around the same time.
Okay, so your recollection is that when Amber and Johnny Depp went back to their trailer, that dissipated, everybody then left at that point?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how far away was your house that you were staying in from the trailer that Amber and Johnny Depp were staying in?
I'd say it was about 75 feet away.
Okay. And the next time that you saw or heard anything was when you went there in the morning and saw the broken sconce. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I didn't hear anything after went to bed.
Okay. And that's the extent of your knowledge.
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions.
All right, redirect.
Mr. Knight, how did you get involved in this trial?
I got a text from one of our old employees who I hadn't talked to for
Objection,
years.
hearsay.
Don't tell us what the text said. Just how did you get involved?
I got a text from. I got a.
That's still hearsay. You're under objection.
No. Overruled.
Thank you. Go on, Mr. Knight.
I was asked if it was.
no.
I'll
Objection,
sustain that.
hearsay.
Apologize.
What did you?
I got a
What
text.
did you received a text? Okay.
Yes.
From
and
whom?
From a former employee.
Okay. And how long had it been since you had heard from this former employee?
Approximately 5 years.
And did you contact Mr. Depp or any of his attorneys?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
I did not.
How did you get in touch with Mr. Depp's attorneys?
They got in touch with me.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
Go on, Mr. Knight.
They reached out to me.
Okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
I don't have an objection right now.
Thank you.
Only if he talks more.
Next question.
And how do you feel about participating in this trial?
Objection, relevance.
It's extremely relevant considering that they have accused him of being...
Overruled.
Thank you.
How do I feel about it?
Yeah.
I'm happy to tell what I saw, and that's the extent of it. I really don't care outside of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Knight. Nothing
All
further.
right. I assume this witness is not subject to recall. Is that correct? All right. Sir, you're free to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, your next witness. Or is it going to be a deposition, or is it going
Apologies, Your Honor. Thank you. Dr. Shaw.
Okay,
Plaintiff
Dr.
calls
Shaw.
Dr. Shaw.
Okay, Dr. Shaw.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case or penalty of law?
Thank you, sir. All right, yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Dr. Shaw. Can you please state your name for the record?
My name is Richard John Shaw.
Dr. Shaw, can you please describe your educational background?
I'm a psychiatrist. I went to medical school at the University of London in England. I went straight after high school. That's actually the system in the British medical system. I did 2 years of preclinical training and then 3 years of clinical work with patients. Following that, I moved to New Zealand to do an internship. It was an internship in neurology, medicine, surgery, and psychiatry. I spent 3 years in New Zealand, and I did a year of psychiatry residency training. Excuse me. And following that, excuse me. Following that, I moved here to the United States for the first time and did a residency in adult psychiatry at the Einstein College of Medicine, which is in New York. That was 4 years of training in the Bronx. And I also did some subspecialty training in family therapy, couples and family therapy as in my 4th year. And after that, I moved to California, and I've worked at Stanford. I studied at Stanford. I did a fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry, and I've been at Stanford pretty much since then.
Dr. Shaw, what is your current position?
I'm a professor of psychiatry in the Department of Psychiatry at Stanford. I also run what's called the Psychiatry Consult Service at the Children's Hospital at Stanford.
What, if any, professional certifications have you received?
I have what's called board certification in adult and general psychiatry. I obtained that from the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology in 1991. And then I obtained subspecialty board certification in child and adolescent psychiatry in 1993.
Are you a member of any professional organizations in the field of psychiatry?
Yes, I am. I'm a member of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. I'm also a member of the Academy of Consultation Liaison Psychiatry.
How long have you been practicing psychiatry?
If you include my training in psychiatry residency in the US, that would be since 1985.
Is that approximately 35 years?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. What percentage of your practice involves treating patients?
Approximately 3/4 of my time is working with patients. I work in the pediatric hospital, treating a combination of mainly children and adolescents with severe medical conditions, but also working with parents of children who have severe medical conditions. I also consult to the pediatric emergency room, and we evaluate patients who show up with suicide attempts and other serious situations.
What does the remaining quarter of your practice entail?
Well, as a professor, I have to do a number of academic activities. So I do research, I do a lot of teaching, I give lectures, I supervise residents, medical students, and fellows in psychiatry. I do some administrative work. So it's a pretty diverse, varied day and week.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about your research and academic work?
Yeah, a lot of my research has involved looking at the issue of trauma and PTSD in parents who have medically fragile children. A lot of these parents are naturally really affected by their child's illness and develop trauma symptoms. So I've developed some interventions to try to help parents, provide support and treatment to reduce their symptoms of trauma.
Have you published articles or books in your area of expertise?
Yes, I have. I've published approximately 70 or probably closer to 80 peer-reviewed manuscripts in different scientific journals. I've also published a number of book chapters on various topics, approximately 30. And I have published 3 textbooks, one of which has gone into a second edition on topics that are related to my area of expertise. And one of them actually is about the treatment of PTSD in parents of premature infants.
Have you published a book through the APA?
Actually, all of those books were published through the APA, the American Psychiatric Association. They have a publishing house, and that's been my publishing company.
What is the APA?
The APA, the American Psychiatric Association, not to be confused with the American Psychological Association, is a professional organization that represents psychiatrists in the U.S. The last time I looked at this, I think there's about 37 or 38,000 members. And the APA has many different roles. One of it is advocacy in psychiatry in the U.S., but it also has an important role in terms of education. So they host an annual scientific meeting every year in which psychiatrists will present their research. It publishes a number of journals in the field, and fairly frequently it publishes guidelines for professional practice or about ethical guidelines that they hope that the members will follow as part of their practice.
What ways are you involved with the APA?
Well, I mentioned my publishing. I also present at the scientific meetings. I last presented in 2021 during COVID. It was virtually, but on the topic of group therapy for parents with trauma symptoms. I follow the APA and their various guidelines. I think it's a really influential and important institution.
Going back to your credentials, what, if any, professional awards have you received?
I've been given several teaching awards at Stanford University, and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry that I mentioned honored me with an award for service to my specialty several years ago. I don't remember exactly when.
Have you given any public presentations in the field of psychiatry?
Yes, that's part of our work as an academic psychiatrist, is to lecture, to give presentations. So I present fairly frequently at annual scientific meetings, as I mentioned. I've been invited to give grand round presentations at different medical centers, including University of Pennsylvania and Harvard. So that's just part of our role is to try to educate our colleagues about our work.
Have you testified as an expert in the field of psychiatry before?
Yes, I have.
On how many occasions?
I would estimate, in terms of deposition and trial testimony, approximately 50 times in the past 15, 20 years.
What type of cases did you testify as an expert in?
They're pretty varied. So some of them have been medical malpractice. I've also done a number of cases evaluating victims who've been subject to physical or sexual assault or trauma.
What work were you asked to do in this case?
My role in this case was to give my opinions about the testimony and opinions of Dr. Spiegel, whom you heard from yesterday morning.
And what work have you done to form your opinion?
I was present yesterday in court listening to his testimony. I have viewed his depositions. He had 2 depositions earlier this year, and I watched those depositions. I've also read a lot of deposition testimony. For example, testimony by Mr. Depp's psychiatrist, Dr. Blaustein, by his physician, Dr. Kipper, and nurse Debbie Lloyd. I've reviewed depositions by many of the therapists involved in this case, including Dr. Banks, the relationship consultant, Dr. Cohen, who was Ms. Heard's therapist, and I think Dr. Anderson, who I think provided some couples therapy. I've also reviewed the medical records of Dr. Kipper and Dr. Blaustein, and some various email communications. I think a lot of the information that has been talked about here.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to offer Dr. Shaw as an expert in the field of psychiatry.
Any objection?
We approach.
Okay. All right. So any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. So he'll be moved as an expert. Thank you.
Dr. Shaw, you testified that you observed Dr. Spiegel's testimony yesterday.
Yes, that's correct.
And to reorient the jury, can you please generally describe the main areas in which Dr. Spiegel testified?
Yes, he.
Objection, Your Honor. They heard what he testified to. What's his opinion about?
Foundation to reorient them?
That's okay. We can move forward.
Okay. Do you have an opinion of Dr. Spiegel's testimony?
Yes, I do.
And what is your opinion?
I have a couple of primary opinions. The first is that my opinion is that he violated the ethical principles that are outlined in the Goldwater Rule when he gave his opinions about Mr. Depp, specifically with relationship to personality traits and his cognitive abilities. My second primary opinion would be that that Dr. Spiegel's opinions were unreliable and that he had insufficient information.
Objection, Your Honor.
All right. You're going to approach?
Yeah. Dr. Shaw, you mentioned the Goldwater Rule. What led up to the publication of the Goldwater Rule?
The Goldwater Rule came about in response to an incident that occurred during the 1964 presidential election when Senator Barry Goldwater was running as a Republican candidate. And there was a magazine called Fact Magazine that started a campaign to discredit Senator Goldwater. And they obtained a mailing list from the AMA and sent out a single survey questionnaire to about 12,000 psychiatrists in the US, asking if they felt that Senator Goldwater was fit to run for office. And about 2,000 psychiatrists responded, 1,000 of whom expressed very negative opinions about Senator Goldwater and made comments such as, for example, he was a megalomaniac, he was a paranoid schizophrenic, that he had narcissistic personality disorder. And as a result of that, he was replaced as a candidate and then went on to sue Fact Magazine for defamation of character. And he was successful in that lawsuit. And in response to this incident, the American Psychiatric Association, that I think was really concerned about how psychiatry was being represented and statements psychiatrists were making about someone they had never met or evaluated, issued the Goldwater Rule. They wanted to ensure that individuals weren't defamed by statements made by a psychiatrist that weren't backed up by medical evidence. And they also wanted to preserve the